Well, hospital porters' pride and dignity stopped the New World Order. Welcome to HPANWO TV. And today, HPANWO TV viewers, I'm in Oxford. I'm actually at the northern extremity of Oxford. I'm at a place called Sunderland Avenue. And I'm sorry about the background noise, but this is quite a busy road. Well, this bit is, it's the northern bypass of Oxford, this main road in the middle. So I'm going to try and speak up and hopefully you can hear me. Now the Sunderland Avenue is actually it's this road here, and you see on the other side of this, the big bypass there, there's another road. It's like this road is kind of split into two roads, and in the middle it's this big main road in the middle where that lorry's driving, and this van and these cars. That is part of the Oxford Northern Bypass. So it's a very unusual arrangement we got here, you know, quite an unusual sort of arrangement. The reason I'm here is because I've probably mentioned to you before that I'm very, very fond of the books by Philip Pullman. That's called the Dark Materials trilogy, his Dark Materials. There are 3 books in it. The Northern Light, which is in America is called the Golden Compass. There is the Subtle Knife, book 2, and then the Amber Spyglass, book 3. And the reason I'm here on Sunderland Avenue is because this is the place where a very, very important part of the book is set. What it is Philip Pullman decided to choose this location for where he placed an interdimensional portal, a stargate, a real stargate, not this stupid, you know, not one of these stupid, not Stargate Atlantis or anything like that, like a gap between the worlds. Now then, I don't know, I think you probably know, most of you, but just in case, the idea of dimensions, parallel universes, the idea that what we see around us, this 3D linear time world we see around us, of 3 dimensions, length, breadth and height, is not all there is to see. And there is a higher dimension, the 4th dimension, and which will take you into other planes like 3D linear time planes like this one, and these ones are called parallel universes. Now in the description box I'll put a link to my article Flatland, which explains that in more detail. But basically the concept is that there are an infinite number of these worlds along the 4th dimension. There's even talk of a 5th dimension, which is sort of like leads off from the 4th dimension. It's a complicated business, but it's not hard to understand. Anyway, this is the spot where in the book it all happened, because the concept behind Philip Pullman's Dark Materials trilogy is this idea of parallel universes, and the book is set in a number of parallel universes. Part of it, which is this one. I'm actually going to read you a short passage from the book, which is where one of the characters, called Will, discovers the Stargate, and I'll show you it. Here it is. So I should have brought my tripod. Hope you can hear me all right. Here we go. Here's chapter 1. You see that is the image there. These are hornbeam trees. This is called the cat and the hornbeam trees. These trees here, these sort of roundish type trees, are hornbeams. They're quite rare, but this whole road is lined with them, and it's quite a famous sight, you know, and it's quite distinctive. And Philip Pullman has just illustrated it there, you see at the beginning. And Pullman illustrates his own book, illustrates all his own books with woodcuts. Now I'll go to the part I've got to read. Right. Yeah, right. Will came to a large roundabout where the road going north crosses the Oxford Ring Road. That's there, over there, see? That in the distance. I've got my hands full, I can't hit the zoom button. Come on. It's that ring road there, or that roundabout there. This is the Oxford Ring Road. At this time of night there was very little traffic, and the road where he stood was quiet, and comfortable houses set back behind a wide expanse of grass on either side. That's the grass there. Planted along the grass at the road's edge were 2 lines of hornbeam trees. Odd looking things with perfectly symmetrical, close-leafed crowns, more like a children's drawing than real trees. And the street lights made the scene look artificial. Well, obviously not at the moment, because when Will in the book gets to Sunderland Avenue, it's actually late at night, but it's actually early morning here, about 7:30. Right, Will was stupefied with exhaustion. He might have gone on to the north, or he might have laid his head on the grass under one of the trees and slept. But he stood trying to clear his head. Then he saw a cat. The cat padded out of a garden, one of these gardens here, on the Oxford side of the road. That's where we are, where Will was standing. And then eventually the cat turns away and she pads across. Hang on. Oh, I need an extra pair of hands here. She pads across the road towards the bushes just beyond the hornbeam trees. That's over on the other side of the road. And then he saw the cat behaving curiously. She reached out a paw to pat something in the air in front of her. Oh, sorry. Something quite invisible to Will. Then she leapt backwards, back arched, fur on end, tail held out stiffly. Will knew cat behaviour. He watched more alertly as the cat approached the spot again. Just an empty patch of grass between the hornbeams and the bushes of a garden hedge. I wonder which one he means. Maybe that one over there. She patted the air once more, and then she leapt back with far less alarm this time. Another few seconds of sniffing, touching, whiskering, twitching. Curiosity overcame wariness. The cat stepped forward and vanished. Will blinked, then he stood still, close to the trunk of the nearest tree as a truck came round in a circle and swept its lights over him. When it was gone past, he crossed the road, keeping his eyes on the spot where the cat had been, investigating. It wasn't easy, because there was nothing to fix it on. Then he came to a place and cast a look, and he saw from some angles as if someone had cut a patch out of the air about 2 metres from the edge of the road. A patch roughly square in shape and less than a metre across. What he's talking about there is a stargate. In every definition of the word, that's a stargate. It's a... Well, I won't spoil it for you, right? What happens is Will basically goes into other dimensions. He goes into parallel universes and he has adventures. He has lots and lots of adventures, and it's an absolutely fantastic book. I mean, when I first read it, it's cliche, you know, but I couldn't put it down. It was absolutely addictive. Really incredible, incredible piece of work. Now then, question is it real? Are there parallel universes? Well, in the book, one of the characters in the book is a woman who was a nun. She used to be a nun and she became a physicist. Rather strange change of career there. But she became a physicist, and then they're talking about Hugh Everett. Now, Hugh Everett was a very famous scientist, a physicist, who actually theorised the concept of parallel universes, as I have just done. Now, read the article Flatland anyway, and there's several more articles, including a review of the first book, Northern Lights, and the film, The Golden Compass. You know, but you can see other things like Michio Kaku, you know? Michio Kaku talks about it, you know. Parallel universes, you know. He talks about M theory, membranes. And membranes are the words for this three-dimensional linear time plane. Of course, they're solid to us, but from the fourth dimensional point of view, they're flat. And this is the point of Flatland. The whole story of Flatland is step down a dimension. Now then, there's other things, you know. I mean, one thing that you often hear about is the Large Hadron Collider at CERN. I mean, is that going to open up a Stargate? Some people suggest it will. I mean, maybe I shouldn't use the term Stargate because it's synonymous with that awful science fiction film and series. But it is. It's basically a gap between where one dimension links with another, which is a fundamental part of the plot of Philip Pullman's Dark Materials trilogy, and what they talk about from the Large Hadron Collider. But there's another question that enters my mind, which came about. It's been sort of growing over the last few weeks, and it's come to a head now. Can these stargates occur naturally? Not artificial stargates, natural stargates. Ones which just appear spontaneously. Maybe when, you know, the membranes, these various, what Michio Kaku calls the membranes, the brains, the M theory things, you know, the M theory 3D linear time planes kind of merge and sort of collide. Well, this is an interesting question, right? Because I want to read you something else, right? Something else I discovered. Right, let me just get the book out. I've got to be careful here. Right, marked it. Here we are. The City in the Sky. Now, this is in a book called Strange Happenings, Memoirs of a Paranormal Investigator by Stephen Meara. Now, I got this book, bought this book almost on impulse, but I'm very glad I did because it's extremely interesting. Right, there's a story all about something that happened. It's about an old man who got in touch with the author to tell him an amazing story. And this is it, right? It's something that happened to him in 1943 when he was a sailor during the war. Here we are. My story starts in the New York docks in 1943 when I first saw the ship I was to serve on for the best part of the war. An American-built landing ship number 4110, LST 4110. The ship was commissioned by the Royal Navy crew, of which I was a petty officer electrical mechanic. The ship's company totaled, sorry, I've got to get across the road. The ship's company totaled 98 officers and men. Some weeks later, we left New York and arrived in the Mediterranean at the close of the North African campaign. It was around July of 1943. Right. It was approximately July 1943. Whilst in the Mediterranean, the following occurred. We were steaming at our normal speed of 10 to 11 knots, positioned east of Malta, well outside of any land. Excuse me a moment, I've got to just put this in my pocket. I should have brought my bloody tripod. Alright. Well outside of any land. Right. At approximately 9 AM, I left the dynamo room, which is in the bowels of the ship, and made my way to the upper deck to see what the weather was like. It was a beautiful day, and the sea was calm, a deep blue colour, except for a low bank of cotton wool cloud, which formed an unbroken wall on our starboard side. A few moments, and back in the dynamo room, when a faulty governor on one of the diesel generators was producing varying voltage. About 1 hour later, a clattering on the iron ladders told me someone was coming into the dynamo room. It was one of the sailors from the upper deck, who attempted to convey some information to us by pointing over the roar of the diesel engines. After several attempts, I heard the word they'd seen the city in the sky. Now, more excited gestures, and this man was gone. With visions of cloud formations which vaguely resemble a city, the long climb up the vertical ladder, a second climb to the upper deck, and in the opening of the watertight hatch, I stayed in. So I've got to turn the page. Ugh. The dynamo room. But then, well, to cut a long story short, he eventually changes his mind. He goes up to the deck. Okay, there's definitely something different. Okay, here we go. Collecting my helmet, life belt and respiration, I climbed up to the deck, to the brilliant sunshine of the upper deck. As I regained my sight from being blinded by the light, I saw 40 to 50 of the ship's company lining the guardrails on the starboard side, all gazing up to an angle to the sky at an angle of approximately 40 degrees. Likewise, the gun crews on the gun platform, the lookouts on the bridge personnel. On the starboard side, resting on the top of the cotton wool clouds, was the most beautiful city I've ever seen. This is a drawing. Look, this is what you saw. Look, there's LST 410. And this is the man himself, Mr. Barnes, the witness who contacted the author. Don't know how much you can see of that, but that's what he saw, basically. That's not a second-hand reproduction, that's an eyewitness account. The city looks about a mile away and full in colour. It was like a gigantic colour television screen, but approximately 1 mile wide. The city was positioned on the clouds, with the rear of the city higher than the front. So the whole thing was in elevation. How do I explain in ordinary words how fantastically beautiful the whole city was? There were buildings. These were glistening white palaces with turrets and castled walls in white marble, set in fantastic gardens and tree-studded parkland, bordered with lawns, flower beds, fountains and pools of all colour. Walking, playing, sitting on the lawns and the fountains were many, many people. Families, children and dogs. And the ship was out of sight of land. It seemed strange that we could see people, let alone identify children and dogs. But as previously stated, we were looking at a city just 1 mile away. The people, although very small, could be identified as men, women and children. The ladies were wearing long black skirts which reached the floor like those in Victorian times. That's incredible. Through the centre of the city ran a beautiful wide thoroughfare with side roads on each side. Each side road was fringed with fantastic lawns, vivid flowers, vivid flower beds, flowers and wonderful palaces. The wide thoroughfare was aligned exactly with the starboard side of the ship. We were all looking along it as it tapered to nothing in the distance. Even the name of the thoroughfare and roads are crude in trying to explain how wonderful everything looked. Along the side roads, the main thoroughfare ran a constant stream of traffic, cabs drawn by a horse and open coaches drawn by 2 horses. I've got to change the page again. Oh, excuse me. Have a look at the view while I'm turning the page. A type of London scene, almost like a Victorian scene. Yeah, the passengers would disembark and others would enter the cabs and coaches. I should point out, you know, Mr. Barnes was not the only person who saw this. Virtually everyone on board the ship saw it. And one thing that struck them was, someone from the starboard gun platform suddenly said, "Hey, there's no army transport, it's wartime and there's nothing." And this remark issued a flood of similar observations. There's no cars, no motor vehicles, no lorries of any kind, no bicycles, no buses, no trams, no houses, shops or hotels, no telephone poles or wires, no posters or signs, no theatres or cinemas, no concrete or brick or slate roofs, everything's stone. And this man, Mr. Barnes, was an electrician, he was an electrical man and a mechanic, and he looked for power stations and pylons, he couldn't see them. That really is strange, isn't it? It's like it's like old, but it's also quite modern. That's the thing. For some 3/4 of an hour, we stood and gazed and wondered. The city had not changed one bit. Right. And eventually, someone called. He went back down below to his duty in the dynamo room, below decks. And another sailor come and got him again and said the city's breaking up. And the city did start to break up, just like a gigantic jigsaw puzzle with some parts missing, not from the edges but all over. Some 20 minutes after that, all that remained was a few pieces and an odd flower bed and some people, a palace, a carriage. Each as bright and colourful as before, but breaking up. And then it was just all gone, and everything was like it before. This is a little diagram that explains the ship's position. Basically, the ship travelled quite a long way during the 3.5 hours that the city was visible. So the city sort of like followed it. Now, the author of the book, Mr. Stephen Meara, BSc, unfortunately dismisses this phantasm as what's called a Fata Morgana, which is a very, very vivid, long-distance mirage. He cites stories of people who've been in the Outer Hebrides and they see Edinburgh. And indeed this is possible. But the problem is, the people in the Outer Hebrides who saw Edinburgh recognised it as Edinburgh. It was obvious what it was. It was a city of this world. Now what Mr. Barnes saw sounds to me like something that doesn't exist in this world. I mean, the author does admit he can't identify what exactly he saw, the place he saw. If it was a place on this world that was presented to the ship in the form of a long-distance mirage, a Fata Morgana, the author has not been able to trace it. However, the author does dismiss Mr. Barnes' story as that, and I think that's unwise. I don't think we should dismiss it. I think we should actually consider that maybe there's another explanation. And that explanation is that what Mr. Barnes and the men on his ship saw was a parallel universe. They were looking through a portal between the dimensions. There was some form of what you might call a bleed over. Just got to get my notebook out again. Oh, excuse me. I use the word bleed over. This is where dimensional planes mix, and sort of it's rather like you can imagine the membrane sort of coming together like that, and they touch, and that's what I call the bleed over. A good example is the movies I've shown you. I mean, I'll put them in the description box again. So most of you've seen them, I think. The films where I describe how I saw the sun in the wrong place. Things like that. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up now is these kind of effects, the things that Mr. Barnes saw, seem to be happening again, and they seem to be happening more and more often. There was a very, very similar incident to Mr. Barnes's tale, actually, just a couple of months ago on YouTube. In China, some people suddenly saw a cityscape, and it actually was filmed, and you can see it in clouds, just like Mr. Barnes saw. Now, it's been dismissed as a mirage, but actually, again, the city can't be identified. No one seems to know where it is. No one seems to be able to see where this mirage came from. So maybe, again, this was another of these cities in the sky, this sort of like a vision, a position where somehow the links between the two dimensions merge, and there's like a hole, a wormhole by which, you know, you can see from one dimension, one universe into another, and even travel there. I mean, this is a staple of, this is a fundamental part of the Dark Materials books, and some science fiction too, like Doctor Who. You know, that's, you know, which is very, very, it's probably the most intelligent science fiction story you can see. So, what's going on? Why are these things happening more often? Could it be that our universe, our universal plane, our membrane, is sort of coming quite close to another one in the hyperspatial realms? And if that happens, what does it mean? What does it mean for us? I'll come back to that point in a moment. But first, I'd like to say, you know, that this whole concept of the setup of dimensions, if you read Flatland, and it's available free online, and there's a link in the article where I review the book. You know, there's it seems that, you know, that there could be inhabitants of higher dimensions that can see into our own with kind of godlike omniscience and omnipresence, the same way that Mr. Sphere can see into Flatland. And here we're getting to the realms of like David Icke and the reptilians and the red dress programs, and Matthew Deleuze as well talks about this. Is there something out there controlling it? That's my question. Now, could it be that these effects that everyone keeps seeing, you know, astronomical objects in the wrong place, I saw the sun in the wrong place, other people have seen the moon disappear, there's all sorts of things on YouTube, some of it's filmed, some of it is just descriptions. But are we going through a period where things like Mr. Barnes saw are becoming more and more common, and they may even become every day? I mean, what would happen if these sort of things happen all the time? What if our dimension really does collide with another one? And what if that's happening right now? This is a question that's I'm not sure I know how to answer just yet. But you know, the scientists take this idea seriously. If there's a hyperspace out there, if there's a fourth dimension, then presumably you can move within the fourth dimension. If you're a third dimensional thing, a three-dimensional plane can move within the fourth dimension. And like you see in Philip Pullman's books, like this one, the scene I just read is in The Subtle Knife, which is the second book of the trilogy. Maybe we're entering a time when these stargates start appearing everywhere. Now, this actually happens in the book, and I'm not going to spoil it for you. Just go out and read these books by Philip Pullman. His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman. You will not regret it. Anyone with any interest in parallel universes will love these books. Right. And we visited the spot where it all didn't happen, but except in the mind of this brilliant author. And one more thing, I think this is just going to be this is just part one of the two-part film, because there's something else I need to add which I can't do just yet because I don't have all the information I need. However, I'm going to have it soon. The reason I can't upload part 2 yet because I haven't shot it yet, but I will be shooting it very soon in the next few days, and I will upload it. I can't explain exactly what I mean to you just now, but there is more to this story than meets the eye, than I've explained so far. So you'll have to watch the second part of my film to know what I'm talking about. I'm sorry I can't explain to you sooner. So stay tuned for part 2, which will be up in the next few days. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to go yet, but that's why I can't tell you, that's why I can't explain to you. I'm sorry about that. Well, this is HPANWO TV at this beautiful spot, Sunderland Avenue in North Oxford. It's Cutslow, Summertown, and this is the setting of one of the most dramatic scenes in one of the best books I've ever read in my life. Sunderland Avenue, hornbeam trees and stargates. Well, thanks for watching HPANWO TV. Hospital Porters, Pride and Dignity, stop the New World Order.